Hello and welcome back to the NFL DFS slate breakdown for Monday Night Football. We have the Bengals and the Cowboys matching up tonight. Should be a fun one. We will go over that whole slate. But before that, I am your host, Tyler Weeman, at FlatTyler83 on your DFS sites and on the old Twitter, or X, formerly Twitter. Now, come join us at LineStar, $39.99 per month. Gets you access to all we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all, one low price. Now, let's jump right in. Let's see what we got. So, 50-point total. Game is in Dallas. And it's a 4.5 spread. Now, our two quarterbacks for the day, Joe Burrow, Cooper Rush, both coming in decently owned. Burrow is obviously much more expensive, but both quarterbacks are in absolute elite matchups. If we look at our team defense tool, Cowboys, 31st versus the tight end. Bengals, quarterback. Bengals, 29th versus the quarterback. So both absolute elite matchup. And if you go through every single time frame, it stays that way. So I think you got to love either quarterback in this spot. Just as always, remember, if you're making a lineup, make sure it tells a little bit of a story, as that is your best way for success. If your story hits, your line usually does as well. Now, getting over to the running back spot. Chase Brown has been an absolute beast since taking over the number one role and Zach Moss being out. He has had an insane workload and just keeps getting it done week in and week out. I expect this week to be no different. Cowboys 25th on the season versus running back, however, 13th over the last 4 games. So they have been much better versus running back, but Chase Brown just keeps getting it done, and I am absolutely fine with playing a ton of him tonight. So definitely like me some good old Chase Brown. On the other side, Rico Dowdle has taken over as the Cowboys RB1. Since he missed week 8, he's been playing pretty much 60 to 70% of snaps. Where they got blown out versus Philly and Houston, he played less, but outside of that, he's in that 60 to 70 range, and I like him. He's in a decent spot tonight. The one thing I do have to say is the Bengals have been tough on the ground versus running back, but have been giving it up a little bit in the air lately, allowing 5 receptions for 41.5 receiving yards, 1.3 touchdowns per game over the last 4, and 1 touchdown per game over on the season. So there's a good chance that Dowdle is getting into the end zone, and if that happens, he's likely going to end up being optimal as well. So definitely am fine going either one of those running backs. After that, the running backs really haven't got much usage. Hunter Luepke is playing a lot, but he just doesn't really get much action. You can count on maybe a target, maybe 2-3 carries at most. And then there's Zeke that's literally just been non-existent. 1 carry last week, 3 carries the week before. In blowout, he's got a little run and done nothing with it. If he gets run in a blowout, he's still touchdown or bust. So he's pretty much out of my player pool. And then Khalil Herbert, since the trade, has barely played. He did finally get a carry last week, though. So maybe that continues and he gets worked in a little bit more. But he's very hard to use in the player pool right now as well. Now, getting over to the wide receiver spot, we got 3 giant names in Jamar Chase, good old CeeDee Lamb, and T. Higgins. Obviously, the issue with CeeDee Lamb is we got Cooper Rush at quarterback. However, at least he has been getting targeted a ton with Rush, 10 targets per game over the last 4. I think you can consider that. And it's also a great spot versus the Bengals, who are allowing 177 yards per game to the wide receiver and 1.5 touchdowns. Now, most of that work is going to go to CeeDee. So CeeDee is still interesting, and he is the best chance for the Cowboys to stay in this game and put up some points. So while I don't think he has that ceiling of like what he did versus San Francisco of 13 receptions, 146 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think there is the possibility of, 10, 12 targets, 8 to 10 catches, get near 100 yards, and then it depends if he gets in the end zone or not. So I don't mind some CeeDee Lamb, but I think either Jamar Chase or Higgins likely outpace him just because of the quality of quarterback that they have on their side versus CeeDee Lamb does. Now, Higgins has had some absolute giant games this year. Do not mind him whatsoever. One thing that I will say is that both teams have been around average to the wide receiver one over the course of the year. This season, Bengals 15th, Cowboys 13th versus the wide receiver one. And then you go to the wide receiver two, and both teams are giving it up a little bit. Cowboys 28th versus wide receiver two. Bengals 23rd versus wide receiver two. Now, wide receiver two spot in Dallas is, a little bit up in the air. So Brandon Cooks came back, but he only played 39% of the snaps last week. So we don't know if that's going up or what's going on. But outside of CeeDee Lamb and Tolbert, the rest of the Cowboys, it's like there's multiple guys 30% on the field. So I think that on the Cowboy side, outside of the two main guys, real hard to kind of figure out who else to put in your lineups. On the Bengals side, they've been pretty much running just 3 wide receivers: Higgins, Chase, Yosevas, and then Burton was on the field for only 4% of the snaps last week. Now, one thing I do have to say, Burton, is they were trying to work him in earlier in this season, but he just didn't show up. So, literally did not show up until late when he was part of the game plan. And so we have no idea what's going on with Burton, but I would not be that surprised if he starts getting a little more work down the stretch here. Now the Bengals are pretty much out of contention here. So he is nothing more than a punt play, as is Mingo, Brooks, Turpin, but, all of them are on the field a little bit, so just need slight consideration. Your pretty much main targets are that are on the field a lot are Tolbert, Yosevas, Lamb, Higgins, Chase. Outside of that, it's 30% less or snap share and punt plays, but all can do it. And Turpin keeps doing it. The last 3 weeks, he's had some decent outcomes. Returned a kick for a touchdown versus Washington. Had 10 last week versus the Giants. Had 18 versus Houston. He has some, game-breaking ability, so he can bust a long one. So there's absolutely some interest in him, even though he's a little overpriced for his role in the team. But all in all, my favorite option is T. Higgins this week, then Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb. But all 3 of those absolute studs need to be considered. Into the tight end spot, we got Gesicki and Jake Ferguson. Gesicki does draw the better matchup. However, over the last 5 weeks, the better matchup is for Jake Ferguson. Now, Jake Ferguson, I am very interested in today. The Bengals have been giving it up to tight end lately, allowing 81 yards per game over the last 4 and 7 receptions. That is good for 30th in the league and 1 touchdown per game over that span. Schoonmaker got a ton of targets while Ferguson was out. Ferguson is back. I expect those targets to roll right to Ferguson, and he's going to be able to pick up right where he left off, being really the second option on this offense. So very interested in him. Gesicki has had some big games and has some game-breaking ability, so it needs to be considered, but matchup isn't the best. Then Tanner Hudson has been sprinkled in a little bit. He has pretty much taken over that like Eric All type role 4 targets last week, 2 the week before that, 7 the week before that. So I think Tanner Hudson is one of those flyer punt plays that is going to get a little bit of work. And if he gets in the end zone, he's all of a sudden optimal at only 2K. So absolutely needs to be considered. Sample also is on the field, but just being targeted a little bit less. Now we get into the defensive side. Look, we got a 50-point game total. Both offenses are going to throw the ball. So I think both defenses are viable. Now, the Cowboys just have more playmakers on their defense. So because of that, they also have a little more of an explosive special teams. Because of that, I do side with using the Cowboys D, even though they're going against Joe Burrow more than I like the Bengals. The Bengals D just has not been very good. They 15 is their high all season and really have struggled to even get into double digits. Cowboys had 17 last week, 22 the week before, had 17 the first week. Then they went through that big stretch without Parsons and where they really struggled, but I do think the defense is at least turning the corner a little bit, playing a little bit better, and we do know that they have explosive special teams and a couple big-time playmakers. So a little interested in their D. It's going to go super low-owned, but I would have a little bit if you're making a bunch of lineups. But just remember, if you're making a call to put in a defense, have your lineup go with that. Make a story with it. On the kicker side, Brandon Aubrey, been an absolute beast all season. However, with Cooper Rush, he has slowed down quite a bit. I don't mind having some of him. We do have a 50 game total, so there are going to be some field goals attempts. And then on the other side, we got Cade York, who is taking over for Evan McPherson. We haven't seen much of York this year. He played 1 game, hit 2 extra points, and missed 2 field goals. So a little hard to want to really throw him in your lineups. But hey, if he's going low owned, has 10 plus, percent 10 plus point capabilities, I'm fine rolling a little bit in there. So that'll do it for us today, guys. Quick rundown of all the positions, both sides of the teams. Hope you guys are able to bring it home, win some games, win some money tonight, and I will see you later this week with more DFS action. Peace!